members of Delaware County's Candidate Forum for Pennsylvania's 168th Legislative District. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jamie Mogul. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Lower Merion and Narberth and a former vice president of the state board for the League of Women Voters. Again, this is the candidate forum for the 168th Pennsylvania representative race. And we have with us tonight, I'm just going to have them wave, Brittany Foreman and Deb Siamaka. And they've graciously said that tonight, as the moderator, it's fine with calling them Deb and Brittany. So thank you. That'll make this flow a lot easier. So again, I'm moderating. This is an unusual time. We are in the midst of a pandemic with the coronavirus, and so we've taken to the web. So tonight we're on Zoom, and we're also going live through YouTube. And thank you to everybody helping us tonight, and especially to the candidates for being amenable to this kind of forum to make sure that voters have the information they need to make an informed vote come June 2nd. And of course, really important, if you are watching this right now and you have not got your mail-in ballot, we at the League recommend you go to votespa.com. You have till the 26th, so that means you have time. Very easy to fill it out and make sure that you're safe and secure, both your vote and yourself, your health and your safety, and make sure your vote counts. The League is a nonpartisan organization, a good government organization. That means we neither support or endorse or oppose candidates. We are dedicated to ensuring that all eligible voters have the opportunity and the information they need to exercise their right to vote free from impediment. And I want to make a special acknowledgement that this is the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters and the important enactment of the 19th Amendment. We still have a lot of work to do, and so the League continues their work, especially against voter suppression. So again, we're on the web tonight, and we salute, more importantly, we salute all of our healthcare workers and all of the workers out there, and that's everybody from a grocery clerk to the food delivery guy and our nurses and doctors fighting on the front lines for the corona pandemic. But let's get tonight, because this is very exciting. We have Deb and Brittany with us. So we're not in our usual course where we would be in an auditorium, but it is really the same format. We're going to allow the candidates to have a 2-minute opening as well as a closing. And previous to this, we've already flipped a coin. And so we have an order to that. And the candidates are aware as the order will go on and off, back and forth. And they do each have the ability to have a 30-second, whether that's an extension of their answer or a rebuttal to their opponent. So following similar procedure, but what is different is how we get questions from you. So if you're watching on YouTube Live, we ask, instead if you were in an auditorium, you would write it down on a piece of paper and you would submit it to us to review. But we ask that you use the YouTube Live feature on the chat feature there, and you can write questions to me and they will be screened by the group that's graciously working with me tonight. We've done another forum and this really seems to be the way of the future. So please give us your questions and we'll filter them through to me, and hopefully we can ask them of the candidates tonight, because we only have an hour, but we want to make sure that we get to as many questions as possible. So this entire forum is being recorded, and it's very important that it must be, if you do reuse it, that it must be shown in its entirety. So clips cannot be used in excerpted form for partisan means. Very important, both for the candidates and those who may be working in special interest groups or whatever. Please, this must be used in its entirety, and it will be posted through the League portals for use by the candidates and the public to review, even if you're not watching us live. So candidates have been aware of the time via our timekeeper, Kathy Youngman. She's on the screen with me, which you may not see. And the candidates for the PA state are here and ready to go. We will begin with opening statements. And I think we're going to start first. I think What did we agree on? I just want to make sure. I think it was Deb who was going. No, it's Brittany. Okay, because Brittany decided to go last in the closing statements. Thank you for reminding me. It's like Friday night. All the days are going together. But look, this is important. Democracy doesn't stop because we have Corona, right? So hit it away, and I want to make sure that you get the requisite time. And so I'm going to mute myself between all of this so that you can have the floor. So thanks so much.
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. My name is Brittany Foreman, and I'm running to represent our district in the State House. I have a passion for building strong communities, places where families and businesses can thrive and where no one is left behind. The 168th district is at a critical juncture. Outside of the immediate health crisis, then the issues that negatively affect residents are issues around development and economic issues. I bring over a decade's worth of community and economic development experience, and I want to bring that to Harrisburg to help fight for the families and communities in this district. I grew up in Westchester, a typical middle-class family, proud, student of public school education. And one of my first early memories around communities is actually a car ride. Every Sunday, we would get in the car and go to church, and we would drive from Westchester to West Philadelphia. And I would look out the window and watch as the community changed before my eyes, from the green manicured lawns to the buildings falling down and the sidewalk in disrepair and the roads torn up. And I would wonder how this could happen in just a short car ride. That is where my passion for community started at an early age. I strongly believe that where you grow up should not determine your opportunities in life. Your zip code should not determine your destiny. And so I've spent my education, I spent my career learning about how to build strong communities. I worked in the Obama administration in housing and policy. I worked in city government, and I currently work as an economic consultant. So all those experiences, all of that has brought me to this day. And today I want to be your legislator to help fight for a bright future for our kids in terms of early education, to help fight for our communities, to make sure that they are vibrant and our economies are vibrant, and also to fight for good government. So I look forward to talking about these issues as we go on.
Thanks so much. Deb, take it away.
Thank you. And thanks to the League for hosting this event tonight. 2 years ago, I was a teacher at Conestoga High School, standing in my classroom, talking about the Parkland shooting, when one of my students in the back of the classroom said, "Mrs. Siamaka, why is it that they always care about Second Amendment rights, but they never care about our right to live?" And that question hit me right between the eyes, because I realized I had not done enough to make sure that there was common sense gun reform in our state. I began advocating for teachers to get involved in this issue. I wrote an article for Time magazine that said teachers should not be armed with a gun. I spoke on television, I spoke on radio, I spoke at the March for Our Lives rally. And honestly, I never thought I would run for office. But then I saw that nothing was going to happen in Harrisburg unless someone went up there and advocated for the things that need to be changed. Because Harrisburg is broken, and we need strong leaders up in Harrisburg. And I've been a leader all my life. I was a leader in the Marine Corps when I was one of the first women to go through combat training with the men. I was a leader in business, working at 3 different businesses in management and manufacturing. I was a leader as a teacher, and also as a president of the teachers union, over 500 teachers strong. So I've got the leadership skills to go up and make the progressive change that you need up in Harrisburg. Harrisburg is broken because we have infighting up there. We have people not working together. And right now, the issues like gun control and also climate change are not happening. And the number one issue that's not being addressed is the coronavirus that is decimating our community. Right now, we have healthcare as a major issue. People are losing their healthcare because they're losing their job, and that's not right. I want to go up to Harrisburg and be your representative to fight for you for the issues that you care about. I want to go up there and represent you, not the special interests. I hope you'll give me the opportunity, and I think tonight I'll explain to you where I stand on many of these issues. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for both not only being here, but sticking to the time, right? So we're going to now start with questions, and that starts alphabetically, and then we go vice versa. So we will start with Deb. And I think it's just really amazing. The league is hosting this, and we have two brilliant ladies who are running for office. This is the future, right? The future is female. And Deb, you mentioned in your opening about the coronavirus and the economic impact. So our first question really goes right to that, both to you and Brittany. What steps or criteria would you support as our economy gradually reopens? And so we've seen a lot of infighting between partisan means, even within party against the governor. But what would you do to really make sure that our economy gets back on track? Oh, well, hold on, Deb, you gotta unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry about that. First thing I got to say is, I know people want to open, and I've talked to business people about this, but the very first thing we have to make sure of is that people are safe. So once we can do that, and I just noticed that today the governor has opened up the economy on June 5th, and we'll go to a yellow. I think that we need to talk to small business owners. And I think, having talked to many of the small business owners in this area, what I've seen is that they want input from their government. They feel that they've not had a lot of say in what's going on. And so I think that there's room for listening to them. For example, I talked to a small auto dealer in this district, and he wanted to sell cars. And initially, the governor was not going to let him do that because he said it didn't meet the criteria. And I made a few phone calls, talked to some people about this. And I'm not saying that I'm the one that did this, but a couple of days later, the governor did open up car sales so that we could do that. So I think one of the things we have to look at is how much personal contact do we have in whatever it is that we're doing? And we've seen that we can modify, for example, by using retail sales that are curbside, we can do that. And we can come to some kind of compromise between the needs for safety, which I think still are paramount, and opening up business, which we eventually have to do. We have to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. And Brittany, I'll let you unmute yourself and take the floor. Same question. And of course, if either of you want me to repeat anything, I can do that.
Sure, thank you. This is a topic of conversation on everyone's minds. I know certainly as an economic consultant, we have been talking about this with our clients for several weeks. I would say that we should expect a very long economic recovery process. And really, I'm seeing a cycle of, needing to reboot our economy and reimagine our economy. I think it starts with just, first the initial response. And, we need to make sure that everyone who's working have the protective gears that they need. And so I think there's a little bit of just making sure that the workers who are out there right now on the front lines, everything from the nurses to the bus drivers to the grocery clerks, have everything that they need to work right now. But then we need to reboot our economy, and we need to figure out what it is that small businesses need. As you may know, when the different packages came through from federal government, a lot of the small businesses were not getting the actual PPP, and that's because they didn't have the relationships, they didn't have the accountants, the lawyers to call, they didn't have the relationships with banks to actually make that happen. And so I really think we need to have a strong focus on small businesses under 50 employees, and really making sure that we can get the money to them and help them figure out the operational changes, the technical assistance that they need, and help them to reimagine, because they are what drives our economy. They are what drives our main streets.
Great, both great on timing. Thank you. It's very different now that we're on the webosphere, right? As far as timing, but you both are sticking to it, and I really appreciate it because that gives you more opportunity to speak. So we're going to continue down this this kind of thought path about what's happening and the impacts, and that really comes down to healthcare. I mean, you are both going to either one of you maybe represent a county that's made national news because it does not have a healthcare department, so to speak, for the county. But really, this is a broad question of what is your policy on healthcare, and what can you really do to address that as a potential representative of the 166. So we go back and forth, and now it'll be Brittany answering that question.
Thanks, Jamie. I believe that every Pennsylvania should have every Pennsylvanian should have access to quality, affordable healthcare. Like many of you, my family has been struggling with healthcare costs. My mother recently had to go on a long-term disability from her work because of health reasons, and her prescription drug costs were out of control, $1,500 a month. And gratefully, the insurance paid for the majority of it, but the costs add up and the doctor's appointments add up. And we were sitting in her kitchen this fall, and a doctor was in the room, and he actually said, "Oh, it's $1,500 a month. I want to show you something." He pulled out his phone and went to goodrx.com. It's goodprescription.com. And he showed us that prescription drug costs $11. And we were just flabbergasted. We're like, how is this possible? So for me, I think the rising cost of prescription drugs is just out of control. And I think that's one thing that I would really want to focus on in Harrisburg. Of course, we also have to pass legislation to protect the ACA if it gets overturned federally. So that includes things like, making sure adults can stay on until they're 26, protecting people with pre-existing conditions, as well as including things like mental health and addiction treatment. So those are some of the things that I'd be focusing on.
Thank you. All right, Deb.
So thank you for the question. So when we're looking at medical care, we think of the federal level, and we think of Obamacare. And that is one thing that we need to do. You saw Governor Wolf take action recently, and he made it so that the state is actually administering the healthcare market to save several $1 billion a year. And so I think that's an important first step, is to sustain Obamacare. But, there are some stories here that are just heartbreaking. And, I've had one in my own family. My brother worked at a company for 20 years in Philadelphia, and he lost his job recently. And because he lost his job, he lost his health care. And I've talked to thousands of people in my year and a half of running for state representative, and I've heard these stories over and over and over of people losing their health care and having nowhere to turn. And we have to be better than that as a state and as a nation. One of the things we can do is we can subsidize Obamacare so that we can provide money to people so they can actually purchase it, or purchase COBRA if they need to. We've also got to look at the social safety net. One of the big problems we see with our healthcare system is it's a holistic problem. For example, if you look in North Philadelphia, the average life expectancy is 66 years old. In Center City, it's 88. Something's really wrong here when our social fabric of our safety net is so broken, so ripped, that we have a healthcare system that has to make up for that. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for ending on time. And just to remind you both, you do have that additional 30 seconds if you would like it. So here's a question we got, and really pertinent specifically to Delco and the surrounding area. And again, Deb, you'll be going now first, and then Brittany. So it says, the Mariner East 2 pipeline is devastating lives in the 168th, and I would say beyond that. Vague and disingenuous stances calling for a moratorium until it is safe have been adopted by legislators and candidates across the region. Will both of you, as candidates, if you do become representative, will you publicly denounce Sunoco tonight, Energy Transfer, and Econasult for their blatant corruption and disregard for human lives?
Okay, so I want to address this. First of all, I want to say that last night I held a town hall on the pipeline, and I brought in people from all over Chester County and Delaware County to talk about this issue. The pipeline right now is not safe. There is no safety plan. If there's an explosion or a fire, the residents don't know what to do. We have elderly people being told to run in the opposite direction of an explosion. So because of that, we have to shut the pipeline down now. Shut it down. Because when you look at that pipeline, there is no greater issue, no greater risk in this district. And what has been lost in this whole discussion of the Mariner East pipeline is most people think that it's only if you live next to the pipeline that it's a problem. The blast radius for this pipeline extends extensively and affects areas like Media, Thornbury, Edgemont, Middletown, Newtown Square, all of these areas. I've walked around this district. I've knocked on all these doors. And when I've talked to the residents. They are irate. They have not been listened to by their government. They have not been listened to by officials. They've been lied to. And you know what? They have a right to be angry. And I'm angry too. And we need to hold Sunoco and Energy Transfer's feet to the fire now. Thank you.
Brittany?
The Mariner East 2 pipeline has had a disastrous effect on our communities. Everything from sinkholes to water contamination. It is absolutely unacceptable. And the bottom line is that this is a safety issue. And the pipeline is running behind playgrounds, behind senior citizen homes, behind families' homes. It is unacceptable. I'm all about what can we possibly do, and there are things that we can do. And I do think that, saying one, this pipeline needs to stop is important. And one of the ways people have been talking about is that moratorium until there's a plan in place. But I think it's more than that. I think that I'm a policy person, and there are crazy regulatory loopholes that have allowed this company, a private company, to be considered a public utility and take private land, often without compensation. That's just ridiculous. And I think that everyone in Pennsylvania should be very concerned about that, not just people who have it in their backyard. And so I think there are regulatory reforms that we need to do in Pennsylvania with the DEP, the environmental protection process, the permit process, so that we can make sure that these permits don't get allowed to go to negligent companies. That's one thing. The other thing is just standing up and speaking to the enormity of this issue and the enormity of the problem, and being able to stand up and fight for those who are dealing with this issue across the district. I promise to do that. My time is up because I have lots more to say on it, but.
Okay, I was unmuting myself. Remember, you do have the additional 30 seconds if you would like it. So thank you both for speaking to that. Changing topics, but probably also something that's come up with constituents and as you're running is really the issue of criminal justice reform. And so we have just really a basic question of what do you plan to do as a prospective representative that really can be done at a state level to address the much needed changes that we at the League and of course in the area good government groups advocate for some much needed criminal justice reform?
So I think I'm unmuted here. So on criminal justice reform, this is an important issue for me. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was a legal officer and I worked at the Camp Pendleton Correctional Facility. And I saw the inequities even then in our criminal justice system. I actually conducted classes with the prisoners there so that they would learn what their rights were under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. But when we look today at what's going on with our criminal justice system, we see so many problems. One of them is in our own district, we have a prison that's been making money for a private corporation. And luckily, I think that's going to change, right? So we can make sure that throughout the state, we are not having prisons that make money, private prisons that make money off our citizens. Another thing we can do is change the cash bail system. When you look at the cash bail system, what it does is it punishes poor people and it holds them in jail because they don't have the money to be able to afford to get out of jail, right? And when we look at the disparity between the African-American prisoners and the Caucasian prisoners in our prisons, African-Americans make up 11% of Pennsylvania, but they're 47% of the number of prisoners in our system. We need to look at why this is happening. And obviously, there is a problem of equity here. And I pledge that one of the things we'll do if I'm in office is study this issue of diversity and equity and find out why is that happening, because that's not right.
Thanks. Brittany?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the issues of equity, because the Black and Brown communities are facing such inequities in this particular area. And we need to put in place policies that reduce recidivism and help ease reentry. That does include things like ending cash bail. It does include things like putting policies in place that divert folks who have the mental health illnesses and keeping them out of the prison and into treatment centers. And so, you know, Deb also mentioned the whole George Hill in Delaware County, the whole idea of incentivizing companies to keep prisoners is just disgusting. We absolutely have to move away from that. So I commend Delaware County Council. They're trying to work on that. But there are a number of things like at the state level, but it's really a focus on how do we get these people to ease into reentry? How do we stop the cash bail system? How do we really think about those who are suffering from mental illnesses as well? And I think, like Governor Wolf said, we can't afford to use prisons as if they're mental health institutions. It's wrong, and we just simply can't do it anymore.
Thanks. All right, so we'll thank you both for your answers. Again, switching gears, but also probably something now that you both have been candidates and you're thinking ahead to possibly being or will be one of the representatives potentially for your district. We have a question really about special influences, special interest groups, and really what can you do to advocate, but as well as legislate to reduce or remove the power of special influences in special interest groups in state government?
I think maybe that may be me.
Yes, Brittany, we're back to you, and then Deb, and then vice versa.
Lobbyist gift bans would be one. Another important thing in terms of interests, I would say, is campaign finance reform, and making sure that that special interests don't start at a very early phase. And then another thing that I would also wanted to mention is just redistricting and making sure that we have non-gerrymandered districts, because then you can have just entrenched safe districts on either side, and that is then even more susceptible to some of the lobbyist interests. And so I think those are all different pieces of like gift bans, making sure we're protecting against gerrymandering in these really safe districts, and campaign finance reform. All are really good government pieces that are incredibly important to keep special interests out.
Thanks. Deb?
Okay, so I used to teach AP US government to kids, and they were just amazed at the influence of money in our politics. It's unbelievable. And Pennsylvania is one of the few states in this nation that has no cap on the amount of money that can be given. We saw a few years ago, one candidate running for governor got over $3 million to influence him to establish charter schools instead of public schools in this state. So the number one thing we need to do is to change our campaign finance system so there are caps on the amount of money that special interests can use. Number two, going back to money, we see the influence of dark money, that's unattributed money that's been used in politics. Right now, there's a primary in Chester County where one of our current state legislators is being attacked with dark money by unseen interests who don't reveal themselves. This is shameful, and this cannot keep going on. And I agree with Brittany. What we need to do is we need to be more transparent. When you look at who gets to access to people up in Harrisburg, who gets to meet with the state representatives and the state senators up there, the schedules do not have to be revealed. We have a very poor freedom of information system that protects people who get to talk to your representatives. And that shouldn't be. It should be you, the people of Pennsylvania, who most get to influence the legislators.
Thanks so much. And you mentioned redistricting, Brittany, in the conversation, and we are the League of Women Voters. We fight very hard to make sure that there is that transparency and there is impartiality. you two, one of you may very well be a legislator for the next drawing of the district maps. And I will note, anybody watching, if you haven't filled out your census, very important, very easy, 2020 census.gov, you can fill it out. And that leads to this reapportionment and drawing the maps. And so I do want to ask, following up on that conversation about getting out of special interests and special influences, what is your stance and what can be done to support your stance to, if that is to end political gerrymandering in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in the seven.
Wait,
sorry, was it Deb?
It's Deb, but it's Deb, and then we'll go to you, Brittany.
Okay. So once again, I was a government and politics teacher, and this is one of the issues that I focused on in my classroom. And once again, kids could not believe that the voters did not get to choose their representatives. The representatives were choosing their own voters. And one of the things I did as an AP government teacher was become a speaker for Fair Districts Pennsylvania. And I traveled around Pennsylvania speaking about this very issue. It is unbelievable that in today's government, we can have one political party rig the game so that the other political party has no chance for 10 years of winning, or has very little chance. And that is why it's so important in 2020, this year, that Democrats win the House. Now, I will say a lot of Democrats may not agree with me on this. They think that there should be re-gerrymandering back from the Democrats. I believe in nonpartisan commissions that will use math and algorithms, right, and unbiased looking at the at what our district should look like. And I'll just say one last thing. When we had in 2010 redistricting by the Republicans, we had 1 million more votes from the Democrats in Pennsylvania that year. And we had 13 congressional seats go to Republicans and 5 went to Democrats. That is shameful. That cannot continue.
Okay. Brittany, take the floor.
I was just so excited. So I grew up in the 7th Congressional District, which is known nationally as one of the worst gerrymandered districts in the country. If you guys recall, it was like Goofy kicking Donald Duck in the bottom. It was just absolutely ridiculous. And then the PA State Supreme Court drew its maps, and we absolutely cannot go back to partisan mapping. We cannot do it. I definitely believe in an independent commission to draw the legislative lines. I also I agree with the work that Fair Districts PA is doing and trying to think about the actual qualities and factors of what makes it fair, right? Population equality, that it's geographically compact, and that you have a community integrity. So you're not just like cutting up these communities. And so I absolutely believe in that. I will fight to ensure that every vote is count and that every voice is heard.
Thanks so much. So we are getting some questions in from online. So I thought maybe I'd switch gears and take a look at those, the beauty of technology. So we do see a lot of partisan divide from things like gerrymandering. But if you do become a legislator, what will you do to work with legislators across the aisle to find some common ground and get things done? And now I do think it's Brittany.
So one of the things in my background, I was a community organizer, and we worked together with local elected officials, faith-based community, right here in southeastern Pennsylvania, right here in Delaware County, and working with those who are staunch Republicans as well as those who are liberal Democrats to find common ground, specifically around the issues that they can find common ground on. And so I think that I have this skill set and experience of bringing people together to figure out what it is that is, that you are most care about, and what it is that this person most cares about, and bringing folks together. Absolutely, when you're going to Harrisburg, you're going to need to figure out what is the common ground with people in your caucus, with legislators who are, between the city and suburb divide. You're going to need to find common ground there. We're going to need to find common ground down across the aisle as well with Republicans. And I have experience doing that, and I believe that I could absolutely bring that to the table in Harrisburg.
Thanks, Brittany. Deb, you have the floor.
So the day after the 2016 election, I was teaching at Conestoga High School, and I had kids coming into my classroom the entire day crying about the results, and not just crying about the results, but crying about how they'd been treated in the hallways of Conestoga. And I had never seen this before, but I had gay students being bullied. I had people being shoved up against lockers. I had swastikas being written on bulletin boards. And the toxicity of the school was palpable. And so I organized a colloquy, a discussion amongst all the students in the school. And I made Republican kids talk to Democratic kids and vice versa. And basically they had to sit there silently while the other talked about what they believed in. This eventually led me to join a group called Better Angels. And it comes from Lincoln's, the idea of the better angels of our nature. And I got Republican parents and Democratic parents to sit in a room, and we listened to each other and we heard each other. And you know, there are no simple answers to this polarization problem that we've got in the country, but we need to do something now. When you look at the fact that a coronavirus epidemic could not bring us together, I'm speechless with that. Instead, this president has divided us. We need legislators at our level to bring us together, and I will.
Thank you both so much. We've talked a lot about partisanship, but the fastest growing voters in Pennsylvania are actually unaffiliated voters. So as two candidates who are running under party lines and a prospective representative, what is your opinion on open primaries? We at the League do believe, as taxpayers who work to fund elections, that those 800,000 plus unaffiliated voters in Pennsylvania should be part of the political process. So do you have an opinion on open primaries, and how will you work when you get to Harrisburg to make sure that that happens?
Well, I will say that my party won't like this answer, but I do believe in open primaries. When you study a state like California, California moved to open primaries many years ago, well, actually about 10 years ago. And what they found is that because they have open primaries, you see that the polarization at the extreme ends, Republican and Democratic, has moved towards the middle. And the reason for that is you could have two Democrats or two Republicans actually win in a primary. And so the idea of what's been going on now, which is that each party plays to the extreme ends, because oftentimes the voting in primaries are the activists in the party. And so if you're running, as I am right now, you have to listen to the people who are going to vote. And it's hard to be an independent thinker when the only people who are showing up are people who are activists. We need to include everyone. You know, I remember that I asked my son the other day, you know, if he was going to vote in the primary, and he said, "No, Mom, I'm not going to vote. I'm not registered in a party." And the reason is that because a lot of kids believe, and I had a lot of students, they believe to be independent is to be independent thinking, and they're tired of the party politics that kind of has gone back and forth between the two parties. So I think that having open primaries is a really good idea, coupled with redistricting reform will really, and campaign finance will help to really end a lot of the polarization in the country.
Thanks. Brittany?
I support open primaries, absolutely. There are about 6,700 independents in this district. Their voice matters. Lord willing, if I'm the representative, I won't just be a representative for the Democrats. I'm going to be a representative for all citizens here. And so they should have a voice at every time we're going to the ballot box. In addition, this is not going to go anywhere. I think Deb had mentioned younger voters. It's about 50% of millennials are identifying as as independents. 50% of 49% of the veterans in this district are in Pennsylvania are independents. You know, so we absolutely this is a huge section of the electorate, and it just doesn't make any sense for them not to have a vote.
Great. Well, we at the League, we agree with both of you. We talked about voter engagement, and particularly young people, as two candidates now who have been running, even in the midst of a pandemic where maybe you don't have the traditional means of canvassing, going door to door. What can we really do, not just as candidates yourselves, but what do you both feel that we can do to really encourage voter engagement, particularly for young people? We at the League, we work to register voters, but there really is an apathy and really to being engaged. So what could we do, and what could you do as a potential state representative to make sure that we encourage voter engagement?
So important. So important, and such a challenge, as you just mentioned. Early, I would say in the fall timeframe, I was at Cheney University, which is a historically black college right here in the district, and I was talking with students there, and even there, honestly, you know, a young lady during Q&A came up and said, like, you know, I'm not voting. You know, I'm old enough, I'm registered, but I'm not voting. It doesn't make a difference. And so that apathy that you're talking about is so real. And it's also so real among, you know, voters of color, young millennial, not even just millennial, next generation after that, but young folks, you know, of color. And so I think we just sat down and had a conversation of how important it is to vote, not to mention what their grandparents went through to get them the vote, but also to bring it, not just to talk history, but to bring it down to to today. What does it mean for you today? You know, if you don't vote, you're giving power to others to speak for you, to make policy for you. And so that is something that we have to literally just sit and have conversations with them, and we have to have real and honest and authentic conversations with them. And so we need to figure out how to communicate with them on their platform, on their level, and just do so unapologetically real from an authentic place, as often as we can, and as many mediums as we can.
Thanks, Deb.
Well, I hate to keep harping on this subject, but that's what I did for a living. I was a government teacher for 20 years. I tried to figure out how to engage kids and to make them part of our system. I have a logo on all of the shirts that I hand out to kids. It says, government's not a spectator sport. You can't sit on the sidelines. I have 20 kids right now who are part of the Siamaka Youth Coalition who are on my campaign team. And these are kids who graduated from my high school and are now working for me, or they're kids in high school right now. How do you get kids to be engaged? First of all, you have to care. Second of all, you have to show them that they can make a difference. One of the first things I did in government class was to ask each kid to write to their congressman or to their president. And I will tell you, when they wrote to President Obama and he sent back to them, you know, a letter with a paw print from their dogs, you would have thought a senior or a junior in high school would be, you know, turned off by that, but they were totally smitten because they actually got a response from a legislator. So the first thing is we have to be responsive, and we have to care enough to talk to them. I sponsored a club at Conestoga called the New Voters Club. We won the Governor's Award in Pennsylvania here in 2018 for registering the most number of voters at a high school. So I have the ability to engage kids. I know how to talk to kids. And I agree with you. It is a major problem, but we can solve it with education and passion and care about the kids.
Thank you both. So speaking of education, we have another question from online. We've seen, particularly now with the impacts of the coronavirus, but this would be true even outside of what we're dealing with. I think it's just exacerbated what this particular question addresses, which is how can the disparities of the digital divide be addressed so all children have access to the same education, same quality education?
So first of all, as a teacher and a former union president, I'm intimately involved and understand all the issues that we have in education. And I will tell you, I was astounded when I made my phone calls, and I made over 2,000 phone calls in the last 3 months. I talked to teachers around this district, some of whom who work in districts next to us, and like Chester, and they did not have the equipment they needed. And why is that? People say you can have a school without money. That's not true. And one of the things most people don't understand about Pennsylvania funding right now is that we are 47th in funding our schools of all the school systems in the United States. That means that the local districts have to pick up the funding for that. So if you don't happen to have the property taxes to be able to pay for those schools, you can't pay for computers and other things that kids need. How do we fix that? We have to fix the funding formula. People don't want to talk about this. It is the greatest imperative that we have in this government to fix our educational system. Right now, we have kids who have completely disparate amount of money being spent on them. If you compare Lower Merion to Chester, $10,000 to $15,000 more per student. This is not right. And when I go to Harrisburg, I will tell you the Constitution of our state says that it is the state's responsibility to educate our kids. I take that very seriously, and I will work on that as a very big priority.
Thank you. Brittany?
The inequity between the school districts across the state and right here in Delaware County is appalling. And Deb just eloquently mentioned that. But I want to get to the part of your question that was tactically, what do we think we can do right now for the digital divide? One is to make sure that they have the equipment that they need. And so whether, if we can't be if most homeowners are being taxed heavily on local property taxes for schools. So I think it's incumbent for the state to step up, provide more funding, also provide more funding in an equitable way, which does require changing the funding formula. But in terms of right now, what do we need to do is getting some grants into the hands of the school districts that need to actually buy the equipment, the Chromebooks that are needed at home to actually, access online and do their work. But I think there's a little bit more than just the tech, and that is the digital divide is also, parallel to those who have less resources and lower income families. And so they're dealing with a whole host of issues when it comes to the educational environment of working from home and trying to do school from home and trying to, not having to go and do your essential job. And so there's a whole ecosystem right in the house that we have to figure out how to support to actually have these kids learning at this moment in time.
Thanks so much. I'm going to go back to some of these. Pardon me, I'm scrolling through many questions. We've gotten some good questions. Which is fun for me to do this as the moderator. Pardon me one second. We're in real time here. I know that. Let you get your thoughts together. We've talked about school funding, lots on that. I was so engaged with listening to you, I didn't have my next question, which is not like me. We've had some questions regarding, you are both from the same party, you're both accomplished women with tremendous backgrounds. What do you think are your two main concerns for the residents of your district? And I would say that really as a question also, which sets you apart from your opponent? Yes, I think it is you, Brittany. Yes.
I think that both of us, Deb and myself, are progressive women and have very similar policies. I think that what is different about us is our lived experiences, our backgrounds, our life experiences, our professional experiences. For me, I believe that my government and my economic experience, I've worked in both federal government and local government, always in positions trying to make it more efficient and more effective and accountable to taxpayers. I believe that my economic experience is incredibly relevant to this district because of the development and growth issues that we're dealing with. And now it's incredibly relevant to this district because of the long economic recovery process following the pandemic. And so I believe that I'm able to bring those experiences to Harrisburg on day one to help find creative solutions for the economic times that we're in. And that's because literally day to day, my job is to help governments, help organizations find creative solutions when they are dealing with economic hardship. And so I am looking forward to bringing that experience to help fight for the families and the communities in this district.
Thanks so much. Deb?
So I agree that we have fairly similar positions on many issues. And I think that my background is very amenable to solving many of the problems that we have as a district. First of all, we need leadership. And every single job that I've had, I've always sought out to be a leader and also to be an activist in everything that I've done. You know, as a Marine Corps officer, I led a company of Marines. I was responsible for their safety. You know, as a legislator, I need to look out for the residents of this district and make sure they're safe in the midst of a pandemic. You know, as a business manager, I managed several different businesses, one of which was a business in Chester County called Neutronics. And I supervised over 80 people. I met a budget. I had to look out for during economic hard times what we needed to do to make that company work. And as a teacher and as a president of a teachers union, I also had to look out for the welfare of my teachers, and I had to make sure that that I negotiated on their behalf. Right now, I'm really worried about what's going to happen next year when the budget gets cut in Harrisburg and how we're going to fight for the limited resources that are left. And I worry about the poor, the people who need education, which are all our kids, and what's going to happen because the go-to for the Republicans has been to cut, and we can't have that next year. I'll fight for that.
Brittany, thank you. I see you would like 30 seconds. You have the floor.
Sure, I like this topic, and also Deb mentioned budgeting, and I just wanted to state that it is so incredibly true and important that the revenues that are coming into the state have been slashed or have drastically dropped, and we are going to be in very serious position figuring out what our priorities. I was a budget analyst. I was at HUD. I managed a $350 million program at HUD, constantly thinking about, what are the priorities? And I think that's what we're going to need in Harrisburg. And I can bring that experience to Harrisburg in this time when we need it the most.
Thank you so much. I can't believe it. We are already getting close to time. We could continue this and oh, Deb is waving. I apologize. Deb, you get 30 seconds now too, but just to repeat, you don't get to go back and forth. This is the end. Thanks, Deb.
So I get to talk now?
Yes, 30 seconds. You have the floor.
No, I just want to say that, I have a lot of experience that in economics. I taught economics at Conestoga. I have an MBA, and I have the ability to manage budgets also. And I think it's going to be very important in this scenario to look at how we're going to get more revenue up in Harrisburg. The big thing that's going to happen up there is that, as I said, the programs up there are going to get eviscerated. And who can best articulate and lead and fight in the face of pressure from special interests? And I would say I've got that background.
Thanks so much to you both, and glad we got engaged on that question. So like I said, I can't believe it. We are already close to time. I have one final question, and then we'll go to the closing remarks. We might be a little over time, but I think this is a good final question, and hopefully you agree. We really always ask this at the end of forums, that people learn from their mistakes. It is often said that wise people learn from the mistakes of others as well. But what mistakes have you made or others have made that have taught you important lessons for life that you will bring as a candidate and a prospective state representative?
So I can remember as, I think it's my turn, right? I can remember as a young Marine Corps officer leading men who had just fought in Vietnam and wondering how I could do this job when I was a young lieutenant and had never done anything like this before. And I made some mistakes. You know, initially, I was probably a bit too arrogant and thought that I knew what I was doing more than I actually knew. But what I learned to do over the long haul was to find people who knew better than I did and to listen to those people. And by doing that, I think that's become a big leadership trait of mine. If you talk to people who've worked for me, they would tell you that I'm a listener. And I think that actually women bring a special kind of leadership that we're now seeing up in Harrisburg and across this country. Women are collaborative. Women use a different type of leadership style. They're willing to work for consensus. And I believe that rather than being a top-down leader who demands things, I'm the kind of person who will listen to my constituents, who will listen to the people who work with me, the other state reps, and then act. And I think that that's a very powerful tool to build a kind of leadership that we need going forth in the 21st century.
Thank you. Brittany? Have you a mute there?
Yeah, this is a good question and a very difficult one. I think that mistakes are something that you can learn from, and particularly in the Black community, I feel like we have learned about the mistakes of our past and the generations before us. And so we've learned in generations how important education was. For instance, my mother, both my parents actually were the first to go to college in their from their families. And I think that's because the generation before them didn't value education as much. And potentially because they were dealing with different, hardships. And so I think, being able to pass down those different kind of generational learnings is so important. I think from my mother's generation, she would share to you about how important it is to fight for others and to remember those who are not at the table. But she often has the, I'm going to stay in my lane, right? I'm going to do the best that I can do. I'm going to be educated, and I'm going to, do the best I could do for my family. And I think that while that worked perfect for her, and she provided such a wonderful background and upbringing for us, that I think that we need to take the next generation, and my generation needs to take it further to figure out how we can affect our communities, how we can impact our communities, and how we can fight for the larger society. And that includes right now with 168th District.
Thanks so much. Well, we are getting close to time. Sorry, might be a little over. Hard to believe we are at our closings. And so I want to give you both time. Again, it is 2 minutes each, and we've agreed to the timing, so or the order. So I'll let you have the floor. I'm going to mute myself.
That's me, right? So I want to thank the League for hosting this event tonight. I really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in the midst of a crisis, a coronavirus crisis that we didn't anticipate. It has ravaged us. 100,000 people are dead. We have missed weddings, and we have missed graduations. Our economy is in ruins. And the question is, how are we going to fix this? Well, we need great leadership right now. We need stable leadership in these unprecedented times. As a Marine, as a teacher, as a union president, as a business leader, I've got the stable leadership that we need in these unprecedented times. And beyond that, we need leadership who takes action. For the last 3 months, I haven't sat around and wished for something to happen. I've talked to 2,000 people personally. Myself, I've made 2,000 phone calls, and I've talked to a number of people, and I've helped them. I helped a blind couple register to vote. I helped an elderly person who, believe it or not, is still working, and she couldn't get unemployment. I held a pipeline town hall so we could talk about the issues that face the pipeline. I've held a people's town hall to talk about how the coronavirus has affected our neighborhood. Right now, I am working with assisted living centers and the county council to make sure that they are not disenfranchised as voters, that they can actually vote on election day. This is what I do. And I have been endorsed by people I really believe in, progressive leaders like Mary Gay Scanlon and Representative Jen O'Mara, and organizations like Moms Demand Action on Guns and the AFL-CIO and the National Organization of Women. I've been endorsed by these organizations because they know that I've got the leadership quality to do the job. I ask for your vote on June 2nd, or if you vote by mail, I ask for your vote today or whenever you get your ballot. And I tell you that it will be the privilege of my life to be your state representative and to serve you, the people of this district.
Thanks, Deb. Brittany, and we'll end with you, and then I'll do a short closing.
Thanks. On June 2nd, you have a very important decision to make. I believe I am the right choice because I can win in November. I have actual experience, day-to-day professional experience with the very issues that our district is dealing with, whether it be development, whether it be growth, whether it be the economic recovery that we're going to be going through. Day-to-day experience. I have a message of fiscal responsibility that will resonate with both Democrats, independents, and Republicans. I have an ability to excite portions of the electorate that have not been voting previously, including things like young families and millennials. And as a former collegiate athlete, I can promise you that I have the competitive drive and the fight to bring this to Chris Quinn and the Delaware County Republicans. You know, together we can flip this seat. It is incredibly important. We only need 9 seats in the House. We can flip this seat in November, but I need your help. I need your vote on June 2nd, or if you're voting by mail, whenever your ballot arrives. I need your help reaching other voters. So please consider going to voteforeman.com to see about our volunteer opportunities. And I just want to thank you for the consideration for everyone who's taking time out of their Friday evening to listen in. I want to thank you for your consideration and being an informed citizen. And I certainly want to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this event and providing a platform for us to actually reach voters in this district. Thank you so much and take care.
Well, thank you both again. This has been really great. And this is, as a league member and somebody who's a policy wonk, I could do this all night, but we don't have that ability. And so again, thank you both as candidates. Thank you for running. And again, it's really important that we hear as voters where you stand on the issues, but also where you feel that you're going to go as a potential legislator. So thank you again. And I want to particularly thank all the team that's working with me to have this go live on YouTube, as well as Zoom, counting time. So Kathy Youngman, I know Ann Mazakowski, Anne Marie Houseman, Roberta Winters. I mean, there's a long list, but particularly thank you to the leagues of Delaware County, Central Delaware County, and as well as the League of Women Voters of Radnor, really to make this happen. And I want to report again, you are still within time to apply for your mail-in ballot, votespa.gov. And I say again, .com. I always say it's the vote spa. You should go there. You should have a treatment. And so you should register. If you haven't registered, you're a bit too late for that. But hey, you can still register to make sure that you can vote in the November election. And you can still register to get that mail-in ballot. And also make sure that you're aware that there are different polling locations. You can find that as well on votespa.com. And of course, Vote 411, our great league resource to find out about the candidates and prepare your ballot and make sure that you have a good nonpartisan resource to plan ahead for this campaign time period. And really make sure that you stay safe and you stay healthy. And we are really grateful. Again, you can join the league. It's free for students under $35. Be a part of the league, get involved, be a part of a community in helping to make sure that people are engaged in their community and that we do exercise our most important right, which is the right to vote and use our voice on election day. So thank you so much. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Deb, and good luck to you both, and have a good night.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.